I never thought I'd be the guy posting something like this, but here I am. My name's Mike, and I guess I just need to get this off my chest because I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything that's happened. I was with Lisa for nearly 5 years before we got engaged and then eventually married. She's the kind of girl who always played it cool, kinda bitchy, but in a way that made her seem confident, maybe even untouchable. She's attractive, sure, but she's also manipulative as hell. I always knew she had a bit of an attitude and liked to run her mouth, but I thought I knew her. Thought I could trust her. Looking back, though, there were little signs. She'd suddenly be working late a lot, and I never thought much of it at first, I mean. Everyone's got to grind, right? But then I started noticing how she'd get defensive if I asked questions about her work or who she was with. She'd brush me off, say I was just insecure or paranoid. That she'd never cheat, that she loved me, and she'd never do anything to hurt me. But the thing is, I always had this nagging feeling like maybe I was missing something, like she was hiding something. I didn't want to believe it, especially not before our wedding. I mean, we were planning this big thing, making promises, talking about forever. One night I came home early from work because I wasn't feeling well. I decided to check her phone, just to see if everything was okay. I know it's not exactly the best move, but I'd caught her lying before, so I figured maybe I'd find something. She was in the living room, pretending to watch TV, but when I picked up her phone, I saw her message thread with someone named Tom. Instantly, my gut clenched. I didn't even look at the messages at first. I just saw how many there were and how they were always late at night, always about work stuff, or so she said. But then I scrolled a bit more and I saw something that made my blood run cold. Hotel receipts, 2 of them. One was from a hotel downtown, the other from a city about an hour away. Both were in her name but had timestamps that did add up with her working late stories. She told me she'd been at the office every night working on the big project, but those receipts clearly showed she was elsewhere, and not alone. One of the receipts was from a night she said she was staying late at the office, but there it was, a hotel check-in, a dinner, and a night away with someone else. I couldn't believe it. My mind was racing. I felt sick, like I'd been punched in the stomach. I stared at her, my heart pounding, trying to process what I was seeing. She caught me looking and her face immediately went into this bitchy, defensive mask. "What are you doing? Mind your own business," she snapped, snatching her phone away. I pressed her, asked her who Tom was, and she lied right to my face, saying he was just a coworker, that she was helping him with a project, that it was nothing serious. Of course it was bullshit. I knew she was lying. The way she looked at me like I was the crazy one only made everything worse. I'd always thought she was loyal, but now I had proof that she'd been lying for months. That was the moment I realized everything I believed in was crumbling. I've been so blinded by love, by the wedding plans and the future we talked about. But now the foundation was shattered. All those little things I ignored, the missed calls, the secretive texts, the excuses about working late, turns out none of it was real. She'd been sneaking around, lying through her teeth, cheating with her coworker Tom, right before our wedding. It hit me hard. The trust was gone, and I didn't know if I'd ever see her the same way again. After I saw those receipts, everything changed in an instant. I couldn't breathe properly, like my chest was tightening and my mind was racing 1,000 miles an hour. I wanted to scream, yell, or just break something, but I also felt like I was falling into this dark hole of disbelief. How long had she been lying? How many nights had she been with Tom? Were there other guys? Was I just some fool who thought he knew her? The shock was numbing at first, but then it turned into this boiling rage I could contain. I remember packing around the living room, trying to piece everything together. My hands were trembling and I couldn't stop thinking about what she'd told me about her work ethic and being so committed to our wedding. All that bullshit she spewed about honesty and loyalty. That was all lies. She'd been sneaking around, lying to my face, hiding her real life from me. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and honestly kind of stupid. How did I not see it coming? How did I not notice that she was acting different, that she was hiding her phone all the time? I guess I was just too naive, too in love to see what was right there in front of me. I confronted her again that night. I was angry, furious, and hurt all at once. I told her I knew everything about Tom, the hotel receipts, the late-night lies. Her reaction was classic Lisa. She rolled her eyes, scoffed, and then started with the typical bullshit. "You're paranoid," she said, crossing her arms, looking at me like I was the crazy one. "You're just jealous because I work hard. Tom's just a friend. You're overreacting. Why would I cheat on you? We're supposed to get married. Do you really think I'd ruin everything over some stupid guy?" Her voice was high-pitched, her words sharp, but I could see the glint in her eyes, that bitchy, manipulative look that said she wasn't going to admit a damn thing. I felt like I was talking to a wall. I told her I didn't believe her, that I had proof, and she just kept denying, spinning her web of lies. She kept saying I was insecure, that I was crazy, that I was ruining what we had. But I wasn't listening anymore. My mind was clouded with rage and heartbreak. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but the evidence was too clear. She'd been lying from the start, hiding her affair, lying about her work just to cover her ass. I started to realize she'd been betraying me for months, maybe even longer. By the end of that night, everything felt like it was falling apart. I couldn't sleep. I just sat in the dark, replaying everything I'd learned, every moment I'd been duped. I felt sick thinking about her with Tom, about how she'd lied so easily. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind. How could I have trusted someone who clearly didn't love me enough to tell the truth? And then, of course, the question of what to do next kept swirling in my head. I knew I couldn't just pretend none of this had happened. I had to decide if I was going to stay and try to fix it or cut my losses and walk away. It was one of those nights that felt like the end of everything I thought was real. I didn't sleep, I didn't eat, and instead I just sat there stewing in my own anger and sadness. The betrayal cut deep, and I knew I'd never look at her the same way again. I kept thinking about all the times she'd lied, all the moments I was naive enough to believe she was faithful. Now I was left with this gnawing doubt: was she really ever honest with me? Or was everything just a lie from the start? The trust I once had is now shredded, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to rebuild it. I felt like I was lost, completely broken, and I knew I'd have to make a choice soon. The next day I couldn't focus on anything. My mind kept circling back to her face, her lies, and the image of her with Tom. It was like a bad movie I couldn't turn off. I kept replaying every moment we'd shared, wondering how I'd missed all the signs. The gut-wrenching part was that I still loved her, or at least I thought I did. But how could I stay with someone who'd betrayed me so deeply? The idea of confronting her again was unbearable, but I knew I had to get some answers. I needed to hear her explanation, even if I already knew what it would be. I decided to call her that morning. I wanted her to come clean, to tell me the truth, no matter how ugly. I remember the way my hands trembled as I dialed, my stomach twisted in knots. When she answered, her voice was caustic and defensive, a tone I'd never heard before. "What do you want, Mike?" she snapped. I hesitated for a second, then just blurted it out. "I know about Tom. I saw the hotel receipts, Lisa. I know you've been lying to me this entire time." There was silence on the other end, then a sharp breath. "You're crazy," she said, her voice rising. "You're just jealous, you're paranoid. I don't know what you think you saw, but I swear I've done nothing wrong." I could hear her trying to sound calm, but her voice was trembling, the kind of trembling that gave her away. She was lying, and I knew it. I told her I didn't believe her, that I had proof, and I wanted her to tell me the truth. She paused, then finally burst out with a string of excuses. "It was just a stupid mistake. It meant nothing. We were just helping Tom with his stupid project. I never cheated on you, you're overreacting." That's when I lost it. I told her that I wasn't stupid, that I'd seen the receipts, that I knew she'd been lying to me from the start. I asked her why she'd do something so cruel, so manipulative. She insisted she loved me, that she was under stress, that Tom was just a friend. But I'd heard enough. The only thing I could think about was how she'd lied to my face, how she'd betrayed me while pretending she was this perfect, loyal wife. I told her I needed some space and that I'd think about everything. I hung up feeling numb but also furious. I knew I couldn't just let this go. I started digging into her phone, trying to find more evidence, more proof that she'd been cheating for months. I found messages, photos, all hidden behind her back. She staged everything so I wouldn't find out, but I did. And the more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep her lies went. It was like she was living this double life, one where she was married to me and another where she was sneaking around with her coworker Tom. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so trusting. I felt like a fool. I also felt angry at her, at myself, and at the whole situation. That night I sat alone, staring at the photos I'd saved. I couldn't sleep again. The betrayal was eating me up inside. I kept asking myself if I should confront her again, if I should give her a chance to explain or just cut everything off immediately. I thought about what I wanted, and honestly, I didn't want a future with someone so dishonest. But part of me still loved her, and that made it even harder to see the truth. I knew I was at a crossroads, and whatever I decided next would change everything forever. I just didn't know if I was strong enough to handle it. The next few days were a blur of thoughts I couldn't escape from. Every time I tried to focus on work or anything else, her face would flash in my mind and the memories of the good times we'd had. I kept asking myself if I was overreacting, if maybe I'd jumped to conclusions. But then I looked at the evidence, the hotel receipts, the texts, the photos, and I knew I was right. She'd been lying to me for months, cheating on me with Tom right before our wedding. How could she have been so callous? How could she have played me like that? I decided I needed to confront her face to face. I couldn't just call or text anymore. I had to see her, hear her lies, watch her reaction. So I set up a meeting for that evening. I told her to come over, and she did, looking defensive and annoyed. She tried to act like everything was normal at first, pretending she didn't know what I was talking about. Her bitchy attitude was on full display. She snapped at me, rolled her eyes, and acted like I was the crazy one. When I brought up the receipts, she just scoffed and said, "You're imagining things, you're paranoid, you don't have any proof." That's when I'd had enough. I told her I wasn't crazy, that I knew she'd been lying all along. I threw the receipts on the table and watched her face fall. For a moment she just stared at them, silent. Then she started with her usual lies. "It was just sex, it meant nothing," she said with that bitchy smirk. "It's not like I want to leave you. I was just bored, that's all. Tom's just a stupid mistake." Honestly, I was too angry to listen. I told her she was a manipulative bitch, that I was done believing her lies, that I saw through her. I told her I never wanted to see her again if this was how she was going to treat me. Her reaction was priceless. She went from bitchy to furious in seconds. She started crying, accusing me of being insecure, jealous, controlling. "You're just overreacting," she yelled, voice cracking. "You don't understand how stressful my job is. You're making this into some huge drama for no reason." But I wasn't buying it anymore. I looked her dead in the eyes and said that I wanted her to leave, that I was done. I told her I didn't want a liar, a cheater, someone who could betray me like that. I felt numb, but also strangely relieved, like I had finally seen the truth clearly. After she left, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the empty space where she'd been. For a long time, I felt this deep mixture of anger and sadness. I was angry because she'd lied and cheated, and I'd wasted so much time trusting her. And I was sad because I'd loved her, or at least I thought I did. But now I knew she was someone I couldn't trust anymore. The betrayal cut so deep that I didn't know if I'd ever be able to forgive her. I kept asking myself if I should try to fix things or just let her go completely. Honestly, part of me still hoped she'd come back and admit everything, but deep down, I knew that wasn't happening. This was the end of that chapter, and I was left with nothing but questions and a shattered heart. The days that followed were probably the hardest I've ever experienced. I felt like I was walking around in a fog, everything around me just numb and gray. Every time I thought about her, I couldn't help but feel this searing pain. Betrayal doesn't leave easy, no matter how much you tell yourself to forget. I was angry at her, absolutely furious. How could she have done this? How could she lie so effortlessly, pretend everything was fine while secretly sneaking around with Tom? It was like she had been living a double life, and I was just some fool who never saw it coming. But beneath the anger, there was also this crushing sadness. I kept thinking about all the plans we made, the future we talked about. I kept replaying her words, how she always assured me her love was real, how she insisted she'd never cheat. And now I saw it was all just words, empty and hollow. I felt so stupid, so naive for trusting her, for believing she was different from all the other women I'd seen cheat or lie. It was a brutal wake-up call I didn't expect, but I guess I needed it. In the midst of all this, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit around mourning what I lost, even if it felt like losing a part of myself. I started to think about my options. I could try to salvage the marriage, but honestly, I didn't see how that would ever work. Trust was shattered, and I didn't think I could ever look her in the eyes again without feeling disgusted. Or I could cut her loose, cut my losses, and move on. Part of me was tempted to just walk away completely, erase her from my life, and never look back. But I also knew that I needed closure. One thing I did was to start removing all traces of her from my apartment. I threw out her clothes, her jewelry, everything that reminded me of her. I didn't want to keep her around as some trophy of betrayal. I blocked her number, her social media, everything. I figured if I wanted to move on, I had to cut all ties. That was hard, especially because I still loved her, or at least I thought I did. But love doesn't mean staying with someone who's lied to you so badly. I also reached out to a few close friends who knew about the situation. I needed to talk, to get their perspective, because I felt like I was losing my mind. They told me I deserved better, that I shouldn't settle for someone who didn't respect me. That was comforting in a way, but it also made me wonder if I'd made a mistake in ever trusting her. The betrayal left a huge hole in my heart, and I wasn't sure I'd ever fill it again. I just kept telling myself I'd get through it, one day at a time. The only thing I knew for sure was that I'd never look at her the same way again, and that pain was going to be with me for a long, long time. Now, looking back, I realize how much this whole experience changed me, probably forever. I used to believe in love and trust, thought you could count on someone to be honest and loyal. Turns out, I was naive. Lisa's betrayal shook my foundation so hard that I had to rebuild my sense of self from scratch. I learned that sometimes the people we love the most are the ones capable of the deepest betrayal, and there's no shame in feeling hurt or lost afterward. The key is what you do with that pain. I decided that I would never let someone's lies define me or control my happiness. I cut her out of my life completely, no contact, no looking back. I focused on myself, on fixing what I could and learning to trust again, but in a smarter, more cautious way. I realized that my worth isn't tied to someone who doesn't value me enough to be truthful. I've started rebuilding my confidence, and I'm slowly learning how to trust myself again. What I want anyone reading this to take away is that betrayal hurts like hell, but it's also a wake-up call. Don't ignore those gut feelings or signs of trouble. If someone is lying to you in small ways, it's only going to get worse. Be honest with yourself. If you find proof of cheating or lying, don't try to justify it away. Cut the toxic person loose and focus on healing. It's okay to feel broken for a while, but you have to remember that you deserve honesty, respect, and loyalty. In the end, I've come to terms with what happened. I don't hate Lisa, but I don't love her anymore either. I just see her for what she is, someone who chose her own selfishness over the vows we made. And I've learned that my happiness doesn't depend on her or anyone else who doesn't deserve it. Trust takes a long time to rebuild, but I know now that I'm stronger than the lies, and I'll be okay. Maybe I'll find someone someday who values me for who I am, not who they want me to be. Until then, I'm just taking it one day at a time.